Step into any ICU and you instantly know the soundtrack, right? The rhythmic pumping, the beeps, the alarms, and right in the middle of it all is the mechanical ventilator. It's an absolutely critical piece of life-saving tech. But let's be honest, the settings on these machines can look like a totally impenetrable alphabet soup. VCV, PCV, SIMV, PSV, it's a lot. So in this explainer, we're going to demystify the whole thing. We'll break down exactly how these machines work and explore the most common modes clinicians use to manage a patient's breathing. Let's get right into it. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the basics of positive pressure, look at the two fundamental types of control, volume and pressure, and then walk through three distinct ventilation modes: assist control, SIMV, and pressure support. Basically, we're mapping a logical journey from total machine control all the way to patient independence. Part 1. The basics of positive pressure. Historically, if you think back to early ventilation, it relied on negative pressure. You know, the classic iron lungs. But modern ventilation completely flipped that approach. We now rely on positive pressure ventilation. It's essentially the process of actively pushing pressurized gas directly into the airways to inflate the lungs. And what's wild is that this was famously demonstrated way back in 1952 by a physician named Ibsen in Copenhagen. During a severe polio outbreak, by actively pushing air in, they literally saved countless lives. It was a massive medical pivot. But pushing pressurized air into the chest cavity isn't exactly a natural physiological state, and it comes with a hidden cost. It drastically increases intrathoracic pressure. This can decrease venous return to the heart, drop cardiac output, and just tank a patient's blood pressure. It can also spike pulmonary vascular resistance and cause a VQ mismatch in the lungs. So managing a ventilator isn't just a lung game. ICU staff have to meticulously manage the heart and the cardiovascular system right alongside it. Moving on to part 2. Two types of control. Think of ventilators as speaking one of two fundamental languages. The first is volume-controlled ventilation, or VCV. In VCV, the machine delivers a constant flow of air to hit a strictly preset tidal volume with every single breath. The volume is an absolute guarantee. If a doctor sets a machine for 500 milliliters, the machine is going to push exactly 500 milliliters in there, totally regardless of the pressure it takes to make it happen. The second language is pressure control ventilation, or PCV. Here we completely flip the script. The ventilator delivers a constant pressure to the airways with every breath until a preset pressure limit is reached. So the pressure is locked in, which is fantastic for protecting fragile lungs from pressure damage. But because that pressure is capped, the actual volume of air the patient gets, well, that's going to fluctuate depending on how stiff or compliant their lungs happen to be. Let's put this into a real-world scenario. Imagine a patient's airway suddenly gets partially obstructed, maybe by secretions or bronchospasm. In volume-controlled ventilation, the machine doesn't care. It's stubbornly trying to deliver that preset volume no matter what. So airway pressure is going to violently spike to force the air past the blockage. But in pressure-controlled ventilation, the machine hits its preset pressure limit much faster because of the obstruction, and it just stops pushing. The result? The actual volume of air the patient receives drops significantly. So, armed with those two basic delivery methods, we're left with a crucial clinical question when setting up the machine. Simply put, who is doing the heavy lifting here? Is it the patient or is it the machine? This naturally leads us right into the specific modes of ventilation, which you can kind of think of as a spectrum of driving the car. Part 3. Assist control mode, or AC. Assist control is the heavy lifter mode. The ventilator is basically acting as your chauffeur here, ensuring full support during every single breath. You set a minimum respiratory rate and a target volume or pressure. If the patient does nothing, the machine breathes for them at that set rate. But if the patient manages to initiate a breath on their own, the machine senses it and bam, it instantly delivers a full, completely supported breath. Because it offers so much total support, AC is often the initial mode of choice for critically ill patients first rolling into the ICU, especially if they're heavily sedated, paralyzed, or have severe central nervous system dysfunction. But, there's a catch. Because every breath the patient triggers results in a full, preset tidal volume, a patient who suddenly starts breathing really fast on their own can easily hyperventilate or trap air in their lungs. It's something you definitely have to watch for. Part 4. Synchronized ventilation, or SIMV. If assist control was the chauffeur, SIMV is a lot more like a driving instructor with dual controls. It's all about teamwork. The machine still delivers a set number of mandatory breaths to ensure the patient gets enough oxygen. But in between those mandatory machine breaths, the patient is totally free to take their own independent, unassisted breaths at whatever volume they can physically manage. The absolute brilliance of Symvee is right in the name, synchronized. The vent actually listens to the patient. If it's time for a mandatory machine breath, but the patient is in the middle of exhaling their own spontaneous breath, the machine waits. It syncs up to prevent forcefully stacking a machine breath right on top of a patient's natural breath. Because it blends safety with spontaneous effort so well, Symvee was introduced and is absolutely still widely used today as a fantastic weaning mode. Part 5. Pressure Support Ventilation, or PSV. Now we're in pressure support ventilation, and here the patient is totally in the driver's seat. There's no set respiratory rate, no set tidal volume. The patient completely decides when they breathe, how fast they breathe, and exactly how deep they breathe. So what's the machine actually doing in this mode? It's just giving a helpful nudge. Think of it like power steering in your car. It provides a preset pressure boost, usually around 5 to 15 centimeters of water, but only at the precise moment the patient starts to inhale. That little boost is just enough to overcome the resistance of breathing through that narrow artificial airway and takes the heavy load off the respiratory muscles. The second the machine senses the inspiratory flow dropping, meaning the breath is done, the boost cuts out and the patient just exhales passively. Part 6. Let's review the ventilation spectrum. You can really see this journey clearly now, right? We start on the left with AC mode. The machine is the chauffeur, doing all the heavy lifting for a critically ill patient. As they start to recover, we slide over to Symvee mode, the driving instructor, sharing the workload, keeping a baseline but letting the patient practice. Finally, we hit PSV mode, the power steering, where the patient does the work themselves but gets just enough of a boost to help them succeed. This summary acts as the ultimate cheat sheet for mapping all those confusing acronyms right back to their clinical variables. You can see clearly how volume assist/control strictly guarantees tidal volume, while pressure assist/control absolutely guarantees pressure. Seeing how those dependent variables shift based on the mode perfectly visualizes the mechanics we've been talking about. Which brings us to one final, really critical thought. We know the mechanical steps to move a patient from total control to collaboration, but how does a clinician decide the exact perfect moment a patient is truly ready to take the wheel entirely and be extubated? The art of weaning is one of the most complex, high-stakes puzzles in the ICU, constantly balancing respiratory strength, neurological status, and cardiovascular stability. It's fascinating. Anyway, thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this helped decode the alphabet soup of mechanical ventilation.